The dying star filled the sky with red light. It had been beautiful once, bright and yellow and full of life. Now it swelled like a wound, growing larger each day, and they knew their time was ending. High Coordinator stood at the window of the central spire, watching his world prepare to die. His thin limbs trembled with age, and his compound eyes reflected the sick red glow of the sun. Behind him, screens showed numbers that meant extinction, temperature rising, radiation increasing. 3 days, perhaps 4, before the star collapsed and took everything with it. But the star was not the only problem. They had come. 47 warships hung in orbit around the. They were massive things built for conquest, covered in weapons that could turn cities to glass. The Dominion had conquered 30 worlds, and they saw the dying system as easy prey. Warlord had sent his message that morning. Surrender completely, become slaves to the Dominion, or die with your star. Those were the only choices he offered. Had refused, his people would not spend their final days in chains. Now he watched the blockade and felt the weight of 7 billion lives pressing down on him. The evacuation ships sat useless in their docks. They destroyed any vessel that tried to leave. His people were trapped, waiting to burn. High Coordinator, said a young aide, approaching carefully. The council is asking about the ancient beacon. Turned slowly. The beacon, yes. They had found it 200 years ago, buried in the ice of their northern continent. A crashed ship from some unknown species, its technology strange and primitive by standards. But the beacon still worked, still sent its signal into the void, waiting for someone to hear. What species created it? Asked. We never determined that, High Coordinator. The database has no match. Looked back at the red sky. They had tried everything else. They had sent messages to the Galactic Assembly, but no response came. They had begged the merchant guilds for help, but none would challenge the. They had prayed to gods they no longer believed in. What harm could one more desperate act do? Activate the beacon, said. Send the signal. Let the universe hear that we are dying and we need help. The aide hesitated. The signal uses unknown frequencies. We do not know who might receive it. Then perhaps someone new will answer. His voice was tired. Perhaps some species out there believes in helping strangers. Go, activate it. The aide left. An hour later, the ancient beacon came to life. It broadcast on frequencies they could not understand, using symbols they could not read, sending a cry for help into the darkness between stars. The signal traveled at the speed of light, then faster, carried by the strange technology of its creators. It passed through empty space, through gas clouds, through the edges of dead systems. And it reached a small station on the border of human territory. Ensign Gong Bin was on night watch when the signal arrived. She was young, with sharp eyes and quick hands, and she had spent 3 boring months on the monitoring station without anything interesting happening. When her console began to flash, she almost spilled her coffee. What is this? She whispered, leaning forward. The signal was old. The encryption was outdated by 2 centuries, but it was unmistakably human in origin, and it carried the universal code for emergency distress. Bin's hands moved fast. She the signal 3 times, then checked its origin point, a system on the far edge of explored space. No human colonies there. No human ships reported in that sector. But the signal was real. She opened a channel to United Earth Naval Command. This is Station 14. We have received an SOS on human emergency frequencies. Origin point is the system. Signal uses old encryption, possibly from the exploration era, requesting guidance. The response came within minutes. Station 14, forward all signal data to UENS Hammer of Dawn. Captain has been assigned to investigate. Standard rescue protocol is in effect. Bin sent the data and leaned back in her chair. Somewhere out there, someone was calling for help, and humans always answered. Captain read the signal report in her ready room aboard the Hammer of Dawn. She was a small woman with gray streaking her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. 43 years old, 25 of them in the Navy. She had commanded rescue missions, combat operations, and diplomatic escorts. Nothing surprised her anymore. But this signal was strange. 200 years old, said Lieutenant Dew, standing across from her desk. He was her tactical officer, young but brilliant, with a talent for languages that made him invaluable. The beacon matches records from the exploration ship Wanderer, lost in 2247. We assumed it was destroyed. And now it's sending a distress signal from a non-human system, said. She studied the star charts. What do we know about them? Species, advanced mathematics and science, physically weak. They've had no contact with humanity. Dew paused. Their star is dying, they have days at most. And someone there activated our beacon. It appears so, Captain. Stood and walked to her window. Outside, the stars waited. Somewhere among them, 7 billion beings faced extinction. They had found an old human device and used it to call for help, not knowing what they were summoning. Protocol was clear. Any distress signal on human frequencies required investigation. The fact that the callers were not human did not matter. Help was help. How many ships can we gather? She asked. 12 within the hour, more if we wait. We don't wait, turn back to face him. Assemble the fleet, we leave immediately. Dew nodded and left, sat back down and looked at the signal data one more time. They had no idea what they had done. They had sent a message into the void, hoping for any answer at all. They were about to meet humanity. Across the galaxy, they intercepted the beacon signal as well. Warlord sat in his command throne, surrounded by screens showing his mighty fleet, and listened to the primitive transmission with amusement. Someone is coming to help them, said Subcommander, standing nearby. Should we be concerned? Laughed. It was a harsh sound like metal scraping against stone. Look at this signal, old technology, weak encryption. Whatever species answers this call, they are clearly primitive. He waved a clawed hand dismissively. Let them come. We will crush them alongside the... Nodded, but he felt something cold in his chest. The signal had traveled far to reach its destination. Whoever answered had done so quickly with clear purpose. That suggested organization, strength, confidence. But he said nothing, did not tolerate doubt. In the central spire, High Coordinator received word that the beacon was transmitting. He did not know if anyone would hear. He did not know if anyone would care. But for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a small feeling of hope. Somewhere in the darkness, the human fleet entered faster-than-light travel. 12 warships carrying 3,000 sailors, moving toward a species they had never met, to answer a call for help from strangers. They did not know what waited for them. They did not care. Someone had asked for help, that was enough. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 12 ships emerged from the darkness like predators arriving at a wounded animal's den. The Hammer of Dawn led them, its gray hull from old battles, its weapons arrays already warming. Captain stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display fill with data. The dying red star dominated the center of the screen. Around the 47 enemy contacts formed a wall of metal and weapons. Dominion ships, said Lieutenant Dew from his station. Standard conquest formation. They've got the planet completely surrounded. And the radiation levels are rising fast. Their shields are failing. Millions will die from exposure within days, even if the star doesn't collapse first. Studied the numbers, 12 against 47. Bad odds by any measure, but she had seen worse and survived. Open a channel, she said, all frequencies. Ensign Gong Bin, newly transferred to the Hammer of Dawn for this mission, worked her console with steady hands. Channel open, Captain. Straightened her uniform and spoke clearly. This is Captain of the United Earth Naval Ship Hammer of Dawn. We received a distress signal from this system and have arrived to provide assistance. We request that all vessels currently blockading the stand down immediately and allow evacuation to proceed." Silence followed, then a harsh laugh filled the bridge speakers. "Assistance," the voice was deep and cruel. "I am Warlord of the Dominion. These creatures belong to us now. Leave this system or share their fate." On the central spire, High Coordinator stared at the communication screen in disbelief. Ships had come. Someone had answered their desperate signal. But as the visual feed showed him the human vessels, his hope turned to horror. They were so small. The human ships looked like toys compared to the massive warships, and the humans themselves, visible on the bridge of their lead vessel, appeared soft and weak. No armor, no claws, no natural weapons of any kind. "They came to help us," whispered, "and we have killed them." Elder Counselor, ancient even by standards, placed a thin limb on shoulder. Perhaps they knew what they faced. "How could they? They do not know what those monsters have done to 30 worlds." His voice broke. "We called for help and innocents will die for it." On the Hammer of Dawn, Captain listened to threats without expression. When he finished, she responded calmly. "Warlord, I will say this once. We are here to help the evacuate their dying world. We have no quarrel with your dominion, but we will not leave while people need our help. Stand down your blockade." Another laugh from, "You have 12 ships, I have 47. What do you think will happen?" "I think," said slowly, "that you have never fought humans before." She cut the channel. Commander 1, Captain of the destroyer Silent Thunder, appeared on the secondary screen. He was a large man with calm eyes and hands that never shook. "Captain, they're not going to back down." "No," agreed, "they're not." "Orders." Looked at the tactical display one more time. 47 warships, 4-to-1 odds. They had conquered 30 worlds with fleets like this. They had never been defeated. But they had never met humanity. "All ships battle formation," ordered. "Weapons free on my command. We're going through them." On the flagship, Warlord watched the tiny human fleet begin to move. His officers laughed at the sight. These soft creatures with their small ships actually meant to fight. "Destroy them," ordered. "Leave nothing." The fleet opened fire. Dr. Nam Ha was in the medical bay when the first shot struck the Hammer of Dawn. She grabbed a support beam as the ship shook, then immediately turned to her staff. "Prepare for casualties. This is going to be rough." She was 50 years old with steady hands and a mind that stayed calm in chaos. She had seen battles before, but as the ship shook again, harder this time, she felt something different in the air. Not fear, determination. On the bridge, Lieutenant Du watched the enemy fire approach on his screen. Dozens of plasma bolts, enough to destroy a small moon, all aimed at the human fleet. But the human ships were already moving. Had drilled her crews for years. They knew each other's movements like dancers knew their partners. The fleet scattered in perfect formation, each ship finding gaps in the enemy fire, moving with speed and precision that should have been impossible for vessels their size. "Return fire," commanded. The Hammer of Dawn's main weapon spoke. Twin particle beams crossed the void and struck a warship directly in its engine section. The enemy vessel shuddered, then exploded in a ball of fire. The bridge of the flagship went silent. "One shot," Subcommander said quietly. "They destroyed a warship with one shot." His eyes narrowed. "Lucky hit, continue the attack." But it was not luck. Human targeting systems had evolved over millions of years. On Earth, humans had survived by hunting prey that was faster and stronger than them. They had learned to throw stones with deadly accuracy. They had learned to track movement across vast distances. They had learned to predict where their targets would be, not where they were. Those instincts were built into human technology now. Every weapon on every human ship could hit targets that other species could barely see. The second warship fell, then the third. High Coordinator watched from the central spire, unable to believe what he was seeing. The tiny human ships danced through the formation like water through rocks. They twisted and turned with reactions that seemed impossible, dodging fire that should have destroyed them, returning shots that never missed. "What are they?" asked, his voice filled with wonder. "I do not know," admitted, "but they are not what they appear to be." On the Hammer of Dawn commanded her fleet with precise orders. She could feel the rhythm of the battle, sense where the enemy would strike next, know which ships needed support and which could fight alone. This was what humans did. They adapted, they fought, they survived. "Enemy flagship is pulling back," Du reported. "They're regrouping." "Don't let them," leaned forward. "All ships press the attack, keep them off balance." Commander Silent Thunder led the charge, diving into the formation with weapons blazing. Behind him, the other human ships followed, each one finding targets, each one hitting exactly where it hurt most. Watched his fleet being torn apart, and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. "What is happening?" he demanded. "How are they doing this?" Was already at his console, searching the galactic databases for information about these strange creatures. When he found their classification, his blood ran cold. "They're from a Category 12, he said. Turned to stare at him. "Impossible. No intelligent species evolves on Category 12 worlds." "They did," read from the data with a shaking voice. "Earth, high gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, predators on every continent. Their species evolved to survive conditions that would kill most life forms." "They look so weak." "They're not," met his commander's eyes. "They're persistence predators. They don't need natural weapons because they build them. They don't need armor because they heal from wounds that would kill us. Sir, we need to retreat." But's pride would not allow it. He had conquered 30 worlds. He would not run from 12 small ships. "Continue the attack," he ordered. "They will fall eventually." Opened a communication channel to the human flagship. When Captain's face appeared on his screen, he saw a creature that looked soft and fragile, with strange flat eyes and skin that showed no protection at all. But those eyes held something that made hearts race. Strength, not the strength of claws or armor, the strength of will. Captain said, "Why did you come here? You do not know us. You owe us nothing." Smiled slightly. "You sent a distress signal. We answer distress signals." "But you are dying for us." "Not yet, we're not." Another explosion lit the void behind her. "Hold tight, High Coordinator. We're just getting started." She cut the channel and stood in silence, watching the battle rage across his sky. The humans had come to help strangers. They were fighting against impossible odds, not for profit or conquest, but simply because someone had asked for help. Perhaps thought there was more to the universe than he had ever known. Battle had raged for 2 hours, and they were losing. Chief Petty Officer Shin Ho stood in the launch bay of the Hammer of Dawn, checking his rifle for the 3rd time. He was 43 years old, built like a stone wall, with scars on his hands from 20 years of combat. Around him, his Marine squad prepared for boarding action. "Target is the enemy command ship," he told them. "We take the bridge, we end this fight faster. Stay tight, stay sharp, stay alive." The Marines nodded. They were young, most of them, but they had trained under Ho for years. They trusted him. They launched into the chaos of battle. Outside the small windows, Ho could see the destruction they had caused. 18 warships drifted dead in space, their hulls torn open by human weapons. The enemy formation had collapsed into desperate clusters, fighting to survive rather than to conquer. But they were still dangerous. Their weapons still fired, their ships still flew, and they still outnumbered the humans 3 to 1. "Approaching target," the pilot announced. Enemy defenses are heavy, brace for impact. The shook as enemy fire struck its shields. Ho grabbed a support handle and felt his stomach drop as the pilot dove and twisted through the attack. Human pilots were good at this. Very good. They had reflexes that other species could not match, born from a world where survival meant reacting in heartbeats. Pilot O was the best of them all. She flew a single-seat fighter, a small craft built for speed and destruction. Her was Ghost, because enemies rarely saw her before they died. Right now, she was clearing a path for the hunting fighters like a hawk hunting mice. 3 down, she reported over the comms, her voice calm and almost bored. Make that 4. Path is clear, team. Thank you, Ghost, Ho replied. Try to leave some for us. Laughed, no promises. On the bridge of the Hammer of Dawn, Captain watched the boarding operation on her tactical display. The command ship was a massive vessel, 10 times the size of her flagship, but it was wounded now. One of its engine sections was dark. Its shields flickered and failed. Marines are landing, Lieutenant Du reported. They're cutting through the hull now. Keep pressure on the enemy fleet, ordered. Don't let them regroup. Across the battle space, Commander 1 Silent Thunder led a group of 3 destroyers against a cluster of 6 ships. The enemy vessels were larger and more heavily armed, but they fought like prey, not predators. They hesitated. They pulled back when pressed. They did not understand what they were facing. Humans did not hesitate. All weapons continuous fire, one commanded. Break their formation. The destroyers attacked with relentless precision. Energy beams cut through enemy shields. Missiles found weak points in armor. The ships scattered, fleeing in different directions, and the human ships hunted them down one by one. On the flagship, Warlord watched his empire crumble. 22 of his ships were gone now. The humans had lost only 1, and that ship's crew had been rescued before it exploded. How could this be happening? His fleet was supposed to be unstoppable. His warriors were supposed to be fearless. But the humans fought like something out of nightmares. A warning alarm screamed across the bridge. Hull breach detected, an officer shouted. Deck 7, enemy soldiers are inside the ship. Stood from his throne. Send all security forces to Deck 7, kill them. But even as he gave the order, he felt doubt creeping into his hearts. Chief Shin Ho led his squad through the corridors of the flagship. The ship was huge, built on a scale that made humans look like children. They themselves were larger than humans, covered in natural armor, armed with claws that could tear through metal. The first group of warriors met them in a corridor junction. There were 10 of them, each one standing 2 meters tall, their eyes filled with rage and hunger. Contact front, Ho said calmly. Light them up. The Marines opened fire. Human weapons were not the most powerful in the galaxy. They did not vaporize targets or create explosions that shattered walls, but they were accurate, terrifyingly accurate. Every shot found its mark. Every bullet struck weak points in armor. 6 fell in the first 2 seconds. The remaining 4 charged, claws extended, screaming battle cries that shook the walls. Ho dropped his rifle and drew his combat knife. They were stronger than him. They were faster in short bursts. They had natural weapons that could cut through bone. But Ho had been fighting since he was 18 years old. He knew how to read an opponent's movements. He knew where to strike. He knew how to survive. The first swung its claws at his head. He ducked under the blow and drove his knife into the creature's knee. It screamed and stumbled. A Marine behind him fired twice, putting it down. The second grabbed Ho's arm, squeezing hard enough to crack bone. He felt the pain shoot through his body and ignored it. Pain was just information. It told him he was still alive. He twisted, used his own weight against it, and brought his knife across its throat. Blood sprayed across his face. The creature fell. The last 2 died under combined fire from the squad. Status, Ho ordered, checking his arm. Broken but not badly, he could still fight. All green, Chief, a Marine reported. That was intense. That was the easy part. Ho picked up his rifle. Bridge is still 3 decks up. Move. On the High Coordinator watched the battle through sensors that showed him everything. He saw the human ships destroying vessels 10 times their size. He saw the small craft dancing through enemy fire with impossible grace. He saw the Marines fighting inside the enemy flagship, pushing forward despite being outnumbered and outmatched. "They don't stop," he whispered. Elder Counselor nodded slowly. "I have been studying them. Their species evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They survived by refusing to give up, by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, by getting back up after every fall. They are insane. Perhaps, or perhaps they simply do not know how to quit." Turned to look at the sky, where the red sun continued its slow death. "I think, High Coordinator, that the universe is stranger than we ever imagined." Pilot O had lost count of her kills somewhere around 15. Her fighter was damaged now, one engine running rough, her shields nearly gone. But she was still flying, still fighting, still doing what humans did best. A heavy fighter appeared on her sensors, larger and more powerful than anything she had faced before. Its pilot had seen her cut through his comrades and wanted revenge. "Ghost, pull back," Commander ordered over the comms. "You're too damaged." Negative, Silent Thunder replied, "I've got this." She dove toward the enemy fighter, pushing her damaged craft to its limits. The pilot fired everything he had, plasma bolts filling the space between them, twisted and rolled, feeling her fighter shake with each near miss. Then she was through the barrage, close enough to see the enemy cockpit, close enough to see the pilot's eyes widen in shock. She fired. The heavy fighter exploded, pulled up and away, laughing over the comms. "Ghost here, threat neutralized, what's next?" On the enemy bridge, Warlord heard the reports of the human Marines getting closer. His guards were dying. His warriors were failing. These small, soft creatures were cutting through his best soldiers like they were nothing. Sub-Commander approached him carefully. "Sir, we should retreat. The battle is lost." Turned on him with rage in his eyes. "I have never retreated. Never." "Then we will die here," kept his voice steady. "All of us for nothing." Opened his mouth to argue, but the doors to the bridge exploded inward. Chief Shin Ho stepped through the smoke, his rifle raised, his face covered in blood that was not his own. Behind him, his Marines spread out, covering every angle. "Warlord," Ho said, "your fleet is defeated, your ship is taken, you have one chance to surrender." Drew his ceremonial blade. He was 3 times the human size. He had killed hundreds in personal combat. He would not yield to this creature. He charged. Ho the attack, brought his rifle up and fired 3 times into his leg. The warlord fell screaming. "Surrender accepted," Ho said. On the Hammer of Dawn, Captain received the report with a small nod. "All remaining vessels," she broadcast, "your flagship has fallen. Your warlord is captured. Withdraw from this system immediately or be destroyed." For a long moment nothing happened. Then, one by one, the surviving ships turned and fled. The battle was over. The humans had won. They were gone, but the dying star waited for no one. Captain stood on the bridge of the Hammer of Dawn, watching the sun grow larger and redder with each passing hour. The battle was won, but the war for survival had just begun. "Current estimates," she asked Lieutenant Du. "The star will collapse in approximately 46 hours, he replied, his face tight with worry. "They have 7 billion people on there. Our fleet can transport maybe 200,000. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. 200,000 out of 7 billion. Less than 1% would survive. Opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Captain, we need every available ship, cargo vessels, passenger liners, anything that can carry people. Send them now." Acknowledged, Hammer of Dawn. mobilizing all resources. But knew the truth. Even if every human ship in the sector came, it would not be enough, not nearly enough. On the surface of the Park Young coordinated the evacuation from a makeshift command center in the capital city. She was 32 years old, a civilian specialist who had never expected to oversee the rescue of an entire species. But here she was, and she would do her job. "We need to prioritize," she told Elder Counselor through her translator. "Children first, then those with essential skills, then everyone else." His compound eyes reflected sadness. "You are asking us to choose who lives and who dies." "I'm asking you to save as many as possible." Young's voice was gentle but firm. "I know it's terrible. I know it's not fair, but we don't have time for fair. We only have time to act." Was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Your species is strange. You come from the stars to save strangers, and then you tell us hard truths we do not want to hear. There is no deception in you. We're just trying to help." "Yes," looked out the window at the red sky. "I believe you are. I will organize the evacuation as you suggest." The first transport ships landed within the hour. Human soldiers and officials worked together to board the refugees, moving quickly but carefully. There were fragile creatures, easily hurt by rough handling, easily frightened by loud noises. The humans learned to speak softly, to move slowly, to make themselves small and unthreatening. Corporal Moon Hei-jin was 22 years old, fresh out of training, assigned to help evacuate a nursery zone in the northern districts. He had never seen an alien species before this mission. Now he was surrounded by thousands of children, tiny creatures that barely reached his knee. They were terrified of him. Hei-jin understood. He was huge by their standards, covered in strange skin, moving with the heavy steps of a predator. He probably looked like a monster to them. So he sat down on the ground, making himself as small as possible, and pulled a ration bar from his pocket. He broke off a small piece and held it out. "Hey," he said softly, "it's okay, I'm not going to hurt you." The children watched him with wide, compound eyes. One of them, braver than the others, crept forward on thin legs. It studied the food in his hand, then looked up at his face. Hei-jin smiled. Not a threatening smile, not a predator showing teeth. A gentle smile, the kind he used with his little sister back home. The child took the food. Within minutes, Hei-jin was surrounded by Young, all of them reaching for ration bars, all of them chattering in their clicking language. The fear was gone, replaced by curiosity. A caretaker approached him with wonder in her eyes. "How did you do that?" Hei-jin shrugged. "Kids are kids, I guess, no matter what species." The caretaker tilted her head. "Your people are very strange, very kind." "We try to be." In the medical ship orbiting the planet, Dr. Nam Ha worked without sleep. They were dying from stress alone, their fragile bodies unable to handle the fear and chaos of evacuation. She had to find ways to calm them, to keep them alive long enough to reach safety. "Their biology is so different from ours," she told her staff. "No pain medication we have will work, no sedatives, we need to find other solutions." "What kind of solutions?" a nurse asked. Ha thought for a moment. Then she looked at the scared patients filling her medical bay and made a decision. "Music," she said. "Bring me speakers, and someone find recordings of soft music. Nothing loud, nothing harsh, just gentle sounds." It worked. They responded to music the way human children responded to lullabies. The clicking and chattering of their panicked voices faded to quiet calm. Their vital signs stabilized. They stopped dying of fear. Ha smiled despite her exhaustion. Even across species, some things were universal. High Coordinator watched the evacuation from the central spire, tracking the numbers on his screens. 300,000 rescued. 400,000, 500,000. The human ships came and went in endless cycles, each one carrying as many as it could hold. But the numbers were not enough. They would never be enough. "High Coordinator," Captain's voice came through the communication system. "I have news." "Tell me." "A second fleet has arrived. 42 ships from the core worlds. Their beginning evacuation runs now." His hearts lifted. More humans. Yes, word spread about what was happening here. People wanted to help. More ships appeared on sensors. Not just military vessels now, but civilian transports, cargo haulers, even personal yachts modified to carry passengers. Humans from across their territory were coming, leaving their homes and jobs to help strangers they had never met. Why asked, why would they do this? Was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Because we remember being helpless once. Long ago our species faced extinction. We survived because we worked together, because we refused to give up. Now we have the power to help others survive. How could we not use it?" "You owe us nothing." "We owe each other everything," replied. "That's what being civilized means." The hours passed. More ships arrived. A third human fleet came, then a fourth. Lieutenant Du ran new calculations, his eyes widening as the numbers changed. "Captain," he said, "if we maintain current evacuation rates and push every ship to maximum capacity, we can save 6.2 billion. 6.2 billion. Not everyone, but almost everyone. More than had dared to hope." "Push them harder," she ordered. "Find every spare centimeter of space. We're saving everyone we can." On the surface, the evacuation accelerated. Human soldiers worked alongside officials, loading refugees onto shuttles, keeping order in the chaos, refusing to let anyone be left behind. Chief Shin Ho, his arm now in a medical cast, directed traffic at one of the main loading zones. His Marines were exhausted, running on stimulants and determination, but none of them complained. "Keep moving," he called out. "Everyone gets on a ship, no one gets left behind." A young stumbled near him, too weak to walk. Without hesitation, Ho bent down and lifted the creature gently in his good arm. "I've got you," he said. "You're going to be okay." The looked up at him with compound eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, human." "Just doing my job." But it was more than a job. Every human in the system knew what they were doing. They were saving lives. They were being who they wanted to be. The sun continued to swell, its light growing darker and more threatening. Time was running out, but the evacuation continued, ship after ship lifting off, carrying them to safety. Park Young finally allowed herself to sit down as the last priority groups boarded their transports. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. Elder found her there. "You should rest," he said. "Can't," she replied. "Too much to do." Sat beside her. "Your species is remarkable. We calculated that only a fraction of our population could be saved, but you changed the calculation." Young shook her head. "We just did what anyone would do." "No," his voice was gentle but firm. "Others would not have done this. They would not have done this. The merchant guilds would not have done this. Only you came. Only you cared." Young looked at him, this ancient creature from a dying world, and felt tears in her eyes. "We have a saying on Earth," she said. "No one is truly a stranger. We're all just family we haven't met yet." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I think I like that saying." Above them, the red sun reached its final stage of collapse. The clock had run out. "All ships," Captain broadcast, "prepare for final evacuation. Get everyone off that planet, now." The sun began to die. From the bridge of the Hammer of Dawn, Captain watched the star tear itself apart. Great arcs of fire reached into space, each one large enough to swallow planets. The radiation levels climbed higher and higher, overwhelming sensors, threatening to cook anything that remained too close. "Status on the evacuation," she demanded. "Final transports launching now," Lieutenant Du reported. "We've loaded 6.3 billion. All remaining civilians are on ships." 6.3 billion, more than the calculations had allowed. Humans had found ways to pack more refugees onto every vessel, to squeeze extra space from cargo holds, to push engines beyond safe limits. They had exceeded the mathematics through sheer determination. But the still had people on it. "What about our ground teams?" asked. Du hesitated. "Still loading onto shuttles. The radiation is making landing difficult. Some teams may not make it out in time." Closed her eyes for one moment. Then she opened them and made her decision. "Move the hammer of dawn between the planet and the sun. Use our hull to shield the evacuation zone." Du stared at her. "Captain, the radiation will destroy us." "It will destroy our shields first. That gives the shuttles more time." Looked at her bridge crew, these men and women who had followed her into battle, who had trusted her with their lives. "Anyone who wants to leave, get to the escape pods now. I'm not ordering anyone to stay." No one moved. Ensign Gong Bin spoke first. "I'm not leaving, Captain." "Neither am I," Du added. One by one, every member of the bridge crew confirmed their commitment. They would stay. They would give the evacuation every possible second. Felt pride swell in her chest. "Then let's do this. Helm, take us in." The hammer of dawn moved between the dying star and the planet below. 3 other carriers joined it, forming a wall of metal and shields against the radiation storm. Their hulls began to heat. Their shields began to fail. But they held their position. On the surface, Chief Shin Ho pushed his Marines toward the last shuttle. The ground was shaking now, earthquakes tearing through the planet as its star went mad. The sky was pure red, filled with fire. "Move," he shouted, "everyone on that shuttle." Corporal Moon Hae-jin was carrying 2 children, one under each arm. They clung to him with their thin limbs, trusting him completely. He ran as fast as he could, his lungs burning, his legs screaming for rest. The shuttle's engines were already warming. The pilot was shouting through the comms, urging them to hurry. Ho counted heads as each person boarded. All Marines present. All refugees loaded. He was the last one on, pulling the door shut behind him just as the shuttle lifted off. "We're clear," he reported. But not everyone was. Pilot O's fighter had taken too much damage in the battle. Her engines failed as she tried to reach the evacuation fleet. She drifted, helpless, as the radiation storm approached. "Ghost to all ships," she broadcast calmly. "My engines are dead. I'm not going to make it out." "Negative, Ghost," Commander 1 replied from the silent thunder. "I'm coming to get you." "Don't be stupid, Commander. You'll cook your ship trying to reach me." "Then I'll cook my ship." One's voice was steady. "No one gets left behind." The silent thunder broke formation and dove towards drifting fighter. The destroyer's shields flared as radiation hammered them. Warning alarms screamed across every system. One ignored them all. His ship reached fighter and locked onto it with tractor beams. Then, engines straining against the heat, the silent thunder dragged them both back toward safety. They cleared the danger zone with seconds to spare. Behind them, the radiation storm swept through the space where had been drifting. "Ghost secured," one reported, returning to fleet. On the hammer of dawn, allowed herself a small smile. Then another alarm sounded. "Shields failing," Du announced. "Hull temperature critical." "All shuttles clear." "Last one just docked with the transport fleet." "Then get our people to the escape pods," stood from her command chair. "I'll stay at the helm, keep the ship steady until everyone's off." "Captain." "That's an order, Lieutenant." The bridge crew evacuated. Stayed, her hands on the controls, watching the radiation levels climb. The ship was dying around her. Metal groaned and twisted. Systems failed one by one. But she held position. She gave her people time. An escape pod launched behind her, then another, then the last one. "All crew evacuated," Bin reported from her pod. "Captain, please get out of there." Looked at the controls one more time. The ship was finished. Nothing she did now would save it. But if she stayed a few more seconds, the transport fleet would get a few more kilometers away. She ran. The escape pod launched as the hammer of Dawn's reactor went critical. Felt the acceleration slam her into her seat. Felt the heat of the explosion wash over the pod's shields. Felt the darkness of space embrace her. Then the transport fleet's medical ship locked onto her pod and pulled her in. She was alive. Above the dying world, the human fleet gathered its survivors and jumped to faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the star finally collapsed, taking the planet with it in a blaze of light and fire. The was gone, but the survived. 3 months later, a new world turned beneath an unfamiliar sun. The United Earth government had granted this planet a temperate world in human territory. It was smaller than there, but it was safe. Here they could rebuild. Here they could start again. High Coordinator stood before a monument in the central plaza of their new capital. It was a simple thing, a stone wall carved with names. Every human who had stayed behind to shield the evacuation. Every pilot who had risked death to save one more life. Every soldier who had refused to leave without the refugees in their care. Captain's name was near the top, marked with a star indicating she had survived. "High Coordinator," a voice said behind him. Turned to see Captain herself approaching. She walked slowly, still recovering from her injuries, but her eyes were bright. Captain bowed in the way. "I did not know you were visiting. I wanted to see how you were settling in, looked at the monument, and I wanted to pay my respects." They stood in silence for a moment, two beings from worlds that had never known each other, brought together by a desperate signal and a willingness to help. "We saved 6.4 billion of my people," said finally, "more than anyone believed possible, and we lost 12 human lives in the process." He paused. 12 humans died for billions of strangers. How do we ever repay such a debt? Smiled. "You don't have to repay anything. But we must do something." "Then do this." Turn to face him fully. "Someday, somewhere, some other species will send a signal. They'll be scared and desperate and alone, just like you were. When that happens, you answer it. You go to them. You help them because they asked." Was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "We will," he said. "I promise you, when someone calls for help, they will answer. That's all we ask." Far away, in the territory of the Dominion, Warlord sat in a prison cell and remembered his defeat. His empire had crumbled after news of his failure spread. Other conquered worlds had risen up, inspired by the story of humans who came to save strangers. When asked what had happened, could only say one thing. "We woke he told his guards, "never do it again." But it was too late. The story was spreading across the galaxy. Humans, those strange, soft creatures from a Category 12 nightmare world, had defeated a fleet 4 times their size. They had evacuated 7 billion refugees. They had sacrificed their own ships to save alien children. And they had done it all because someone asked for help. In bars and trading posts across 1,000 worlds, species who had never heard of humanity began to learn. Some were frightened. Some were curious. Some were inspired. But everyone remembered the lesson. If you ever needed help, if you were ever desperate and alone, there was one frequency you could use. One signal that would bring ships from across the stars. One species that would fight and die for strangers. All you had to do was ask. On the New looked up at the stars and wondered who else was out there, waiting to be saved. The universe was vast and full of dangers. But now it also had humanity. And that made all the difference.